Hey guys, so today's going to be a bit of a different video, and I haven't really done this sort of thing before, and to be honest with you, I'm quite nervous because I don't know how this will turn out. But essentially, a few days ago, I came across the Dopa post on Reddit where he shares his league philosophy, his thoughts on coaching, improvement, solo queue, just league overall. And I thought it'd be really interesting to do a very similar post, but in a video format, talking to you guys, keeping it very raw and uncut, sharing my league philosophy, my thoughts on solo queue, improvement, talent, and things like that. So this video is basically just going to be me sharing a collection of thoughts, stories, analogies, and to be honest with you, these are things that I'm still learning about myself. I don't have all of the answers. So the reason I wanted to do it in this format is hopefully I can hear back from you guys in the comments to share your thoughts, your experiences, and riff off some of the things I said in this video. So bear with me. This will be very interesting, but let's dive straight in. Now, the way I view solo queue at the most fundamental level is that it's a journey. And it's a journey against yourself to see what you are capable of as an individual. If you are able to somehow express the best version of yourself, what could you achieve? Now, I realize that I only have a finite amount of time in my life. I can't sit here playing solo queue 12 hours a day for the next 20 years. I only have a brief point in time in which I can dedicate a lot of time to improving at the game. Now, given I want to get the most results for the time I put into the game, I realize that I have to understand what's at play, what is contributing to my improvement at the most fundamental level. So I believe improving at League can be broken down to three specific pillars. The first pillar is our mentality, and the mentality aspect of the game includes everything around motivation, mental resilience, tilting, confidence, focus, ability to learn. The second pillar is our technique. This is the physical element of the game, the actual execution, controlling your character, clicking speed, reaction times, our ability to execute, controlling of our keyboard and our mouse, everything to do with the actual technique. And the third pillar is our knowledge. This is the knowledge of the game itself. Champion identity understanding, macro understanding, the theory behind how to win a game, understanding of the meta, game pace, all of these things to do with the actual knowledge of League of Legends as a game. Now, in order for you guys to understand where I'm coming from with these pillars, I want to talk about it in reference to a movie, and specifically Lord of the Rings. Now, I'm hoping that the majority of you guys have seen Lord of the Rings at one point in time. If not, you're an absolute disgrace and you need to watch it immediately instead of watching this video. But essentially, Lord of the Rings tells the story of a small little midget character named Frodo Baggins, who has this impossible journey ahead of him, this impossible quest where he needs to drop off this ring from one side of the earth all the way to the other, to the most dangerous part in the world called Mount Doom, into this volcano. Now, it's an impossible journey. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because it represents very accurately the solo queue journey for an Iron player going all the way to Challenger. Now let's break this down even more specifically. Let's get into those three pillars. Let's take a look at Frodo Baggins' technique. Well, Frodo Baggins has shocking technique. Like, he's a midget. He has, stubby little legs. He's chubby. He has no strength. He can't fight anyone. He has very poor stamina. He gets tired all the time. Like, essentially, his technique is terrible. Now, let's take a look at his knowledge, the knowledge aspect of the pillars. Well, he has no idea how to get to Mount Doom. He's never been there. He's never been out of the Shire, which is his little village. He has no idea how to get there. So he has to follow maps, he has to follow guides, he has to follow other people. He has no clue in the world about how to get to Mount Doom. He has to just roughly follow a direction. And the third pillar, which is the mentality. At the beginning of the film, Frodo Baggins has no confidence. He has no hope. His mentality is in an incredibly bad state, and he's nervous at every single point in time. So let's say hypothetically Frodo Baggins somehow found out a way to improve upon his technique, his knowledge, and his mentality upon this journey. Now, what would the journey look like then? Well, let's just say he was built like LeBron James, had the strength and stamina of LeBron James, and had a map exactly outlining the path he needed to take in order to get to Mount Doom, and he had the perfect mentality where he had the utmost amount of focus and motivation and never got tilted. Then the journey would be boring. It would be so incredibly easy, and it wouldn't even make a movie. And even if Frodo were to just improve on one of these specific pillars, the journey itself would have been much smoother, which ties in directly into my overarching philosophy on League, is that If we are to improve at each of these three aspects within our own solo queue games, we are going to have a much smoother journey. And the great thing about it, guys, let's just say you never reach Mount Doom. Let's just say you never reach Challenger. The skills you learn and the person you become while going this journey, even when you watch Lord of the Rings, the Frodo you see at the beginning in the first movie, because it's obviously a trilogy, is completely different to the Frodo you see at the end of the third film. He's a much more confident, stronger, mentally resilient, knowledgeable, well-rounded hobbit. And that's my philosophy. That's what I love about League, is that even if you don't reach that goal, it doesn't matter. It's the process. It's this journey. And it's improving at these three aspects will increase the smoothness of this journey. Now, in reference to that mentality pillar of those three pillars, there's been this one singular quote that has always resonated with me. And out of all of the quotes in the entire world, it's actually a quote from League of Legends. And the quote is from Lee Sin, and it's master yourself, master the enemy. And this is the way I actually interpret it. So as we all know, League of Legends is unbelievably complex, and there are countless variables that are completely out of our control. I have no idea what champions are going to be on my team in the next game, or what champions I'm going to be versing, or what the MMR difference is going to be, or what players are going to be on my team, what players are going to be on the enemy team. I have no idea the way the junglers are going to path. If I'm even going to get my role, am I even going to get my champion, or am I going to get auto-filled top, or auto-filled AD carry? I have no idea what is going to happen as I queue up into the next game. And on top of that, League of Legends already has countless situations and countless possibilities of what can happen, even if the drafts are the exact same, even if the players in the game are the exact same. So our best bet to improve at the game is to isolate skills one by one. And given how complex the system already is, what we need to do is we need to control or fix as many of these variables as possible so we can see what exactly is going right and what exactly is going wrong. So if we were to go into each game with a different mentality or different mindset, maybe some games you're going to be really distracted, other games you're going to be really focused, and then some games unmotivated, some games unfocused, some games tilted or not tilted. How are we going to know when we get into the review if what happened is a result of you genuinely not understanding a concept, or genuinely, unable to apply this micro-wise, or maybe it's just a result of you being distracted or unfocused or tilted? How are we going to know what the difference is? This is why I'm so passionate about having a schedule and coming in with the correct mentality, because it's a variable we can control. It's a variable we can fix. And if we can fix or control as many variables as possible, it's going to increase our chances of being able to isolate problems and isolate strengths so we know where to direct our attention in the review. In order to better illustrate my point, I want to share the example of a race car driver. Now, in order for a race car driver to shave off seconds or milliseconds off their lap record, they are both incredibly familiar with the track itself, knowing where all the bends and turns and straights are, when to accelerate, when to brake, but they are also incredibly familiar with the car itself. They try not to change major components of the car during a race. Now, let's say hypothetically, after every lap or after every 2 laps, the mechanics for some reason changed a major portion of the car. Maybe the sensitivity of the steering, the tires, they completely changed the grip of the tires, or the power of the engine, or the sensitivity of the brakes. It would be very difficult for the race car driver to get consistent results or see any improvement at all. Now, if you would compare that with keeping the car exactly the same or only changing minor details like maybe the position of the mirrors, it would be much easier for that race car driver to improve every single lap. So this ties into the theory that you want to control as many variables as possible. And this is actually one of the reasons, by the way, why I believe Dopa is so obsessed with the perfect DPI and the perfect mouse and the perfect position of the keyboard, because he wants to control as many variables as possible so he knows what exactly is going wrong. So the moral of the story at the end of the day, guys, when push comes to shove, is that you don't want to have that toxic excuse at the back of your mind telling yourself after that loss that the reason you lost the game was because, you were playing well tilted, or you weren't really focused, or you weren't really trying, or that you were lagging, or you were playing with a duo, or you were alt-tabbing onto Discord during the game. You don't want to have any of these toxic excuses, because this is going to take away your ability to isolate and identify the problems in your gameplay, which is going to allow you to really bring about consistent results over the long run. Now, given I mentioned a little bit about the importance of coming into each game with intensity, with focus, not being distracted, not being tilted, I wanted to share with you guys a few of my own personal tips for dealing with this sort of thing. Now, one of the most fascinating occurrences I've seen within the League community is everyone's fascination with using OPGG before heading into a ranked game. And this is generally how it goes down, right? They lock in the champion, the loading screen begins, they alt-tab, chuck in the names, and they start looking at every single stat possible. They start saying things like this, whether in their mind or they verbalize it, saying things like this. Oh my god, that Syndra has 500 games of Syndra with a 65% win rate. Holy shit, this is going to be such a hard lane now. Wait, no way. Their bot lane's actually a duo, and they click on their profile. Holy shit, they've actually won the last 8 games in a row. Oh my god, this is going to be the biggest bot diff I've ever seen. Wait, no way. My jungler's only got 3 games of Kha'Zix? Alright, let's just make this a quick 15. FF quickly, 20-minute game. How much LP am I going to lose? Wait, if I got good MMR, how's my MMR? Is this going to ruin my MMR? And then they start thinking about all this bullshit, all these invisible narratives, or even if they don't think about these things, it's having an effect on their confidence, their state of mind, how positive they are. They're literally digging themselves a massive hole. Now, what I realized is that one of the tactics that I was doing was actually preventing this entire thing from happening. Now, I actually think this started when I was coaching pro players back in the day. I used to tell them, you need to use the loading screen incredibly well. It's a very important part of the game. Now, what I would recommend my players is think about their matchup. How are you going to play the first few waves? How are you going to play the trades? What's the jungle paths going to look like? What's your prediction or hypothesis of the jungle paths? How heavy trading are the side lanes? Who are the key threats on the enemy team? Do they have like an Alistar support that can roam? You're playing in a mobile mage mid, or like a Bard, a Pantheon ult. Like, start thinking about the key threats onto your champion. Now, what I realized, or I didn't even think about this, is that there's 2 major contributing factors as to why this process was so useful. I would say number 1 is for the obvious reasons. You're starting to think about the game, right? You're going to increase your chances of making good quality decisions right from the get-go. Whether it's how to use your wards level 1, or avoiding a gank, or knowing how to manage a wave properly, whatever it is. That's great. That's one aspect of it. But the second aspect, which is actually probably more important than the first aspect, is that it actually distracts your monkey brain. It distracts your stupid monkey brain, right? It distracts you from thinking about who's on the enemy team, or what might happen if you lose, or what your MMR is going to be like after this game, or how much LP you're going to gain, or just all this stuff that is completely irrelevant to what is actually happening right now. If what you're thinking doesn't change your behavior in the game, then it's useless. It's a useless line of thought. So really give this a go, not just for the number 1 benefit that I mentioned, but the number 2 benefit of just distracting yourself. Use it as a distraction to just stay honed in, stay focused. Use it as a focus tool, essentially. Now, as we all know, after a tough loss or even after a tough win, we can experience a lot of these negative emotions, whether you're frustrated or angry or upset with your own gameplay and at yourself, or maybe at your jungle with what they did at level 2, level 3, or maybe your bot lane because they flamed you, or your top lane because they inted, or for whatever reason, you have a lot of negative emotions running around your head. Now, I experienced this myself as well, and I often found that if I don't get into the review after a game, I will sometimes hold on to these negative emotions for the entire evening. So if my first game of the day is a loss and I have a lot of these negative emotions, this affects my performance in game 2, which then affects my game 3, then it affects my game 4, and there goes my entire evening of solo queue. Now, what I've realized is that I had to figure this out. I had to stop this from happening because this was incredibly toxic, whether it was just disappointment on myself, whether it was just overall frustration or anger. I needed to find a way to let it go. Now, something that's worked for me is getting into the review, because I review, or the way I view reviewing is 2 ways. It has 2 major benefits. Obviously, number 1, you're able to see what happens in the game, what you need to do better, maybe the way you need to navigate the matchup, all the specifics of the game. But what it also does, if you can view it in this way, it allows you to see how you contributed to that loss. Even, yes, maybe 80% of the loss was because of my jungler, but there's still things I could have done better. I could have managed my wave better. I could have pinged earlier. I could have communicated differently. I could have identified the win condition earlier. I could have called that objective off way earlier. I could have played the lane in a different way. There's always something better I could have done. And when I shift my mentality from, it's all his fault, to taking a little bit of responsibility for myself and actually realizing that I contributed to this, even in a small way, I feel a little bit more in control. I feel a little bit more in control of my own solo queue experience. And that just helps me, feels like there's a burden taken off my shoulders when I go through this process. So that's something that works for me, may not work for you, but give it a go and see how it feels. Now I want to share with you guys the way I fundamentally view the game as far as gameplay is concerned. So if you think about winning a game of League, it's made up of a bunch of these big pivotal moments, whether it's a dragon take, a tower secure, a baron secure, a rift herald secure, a one team fight, a solo kill, a mid jungle 2v2, a second blue buff invade, whatever it is, these are just big pivotal moments, and I call these big wins. Now, big wins aren't just random. They don't just randomly happen. Big wins are the result of a series of small wins. So it looks something like this. Small win, small win, small win, big win. Small win, small win, small win, big win. Now, my job as a head coach when I was, competitive head coach at the pro level, my job was to go into the reviews, go to the big win, and then I'll go back, rewind the VOD, and figure out what these small wins were, either for our team, so we can replicate them, or the enemy team, what they did against us, and understand how these small wins were brought about. Now, if we were to take a solo kill as a big win, let's just say, for example, a Zed versus Orianna matchup, where Zed got a solo kill at level 6. If we were to break down all of the small wins across the period of 3 to 4 minutes within that early laning phase, it might be as small as Zed landing 2 or 3 WEQ combos and avoiding Orianna's combos. Whether it was Zed having superior wave management and creating the situation for that level 6 kill by bouncing the waves at level 4, and by level 6 the waves outside his tower, or maybe Zed having very efficient warding and very efficient jungle tracking, which allowed him to position very aggressively. It could even be alternating his dodging patterns, so Orianna went and wasted too many abilities onto the Zed. It could be a myriad of things, but it's all these small little things that add up to create that big win. Small win, small win, small win into a big win. This can even extend to second blue buff invades or to dragon takes. This is the role of a head coach in competitive play, is to understand what led to X event, what led to Y event, and how can we as a team both replicate these things, how can we bring about and understand these concepts well enough so we can replicate them game in, game out, and then also understand what the opponent is doing to us. And this is what I call the reverse engineering technique. Now, I made this up. I don't know where I got it from. I think I just coined it, the reverse engineering technique. But all it is, and this is actually how I got better as a player and what I used at the pro level, was I would go to a big moment in the game, whether it just felt like a shit game state, or whether it was objectively bad by me getting solo killed or taking a really bad trade or having to lose a dragon as a team, whatever it was. I'll go to that moment and then I'd rewind the replay to see what contributed to that situation. And I would try to pinpoint what the small wins or small losses were. And then I could go even more granular. How can I bring about it? How can I replicate that small win? What did this person do that brought about that small win? Okay, now that's a small win there. What was the next small win? And then I'll really go through the key pivotal moments that led to that specific situation. Now, sometimes, even in solo queue, you can actually do this and discover completely new things, right? So if you get beaten by someone, right? So let's say you get solo killed by like a Yasuo at like level 3 or level 4. And you can look at it at surface level and be like, oh yeah, well played, whatever. But if you get very, very specific, you can actually learn things from him to say, how did he create this situation? And then if you understand the situation well enough, you can actually foresee it in the future. And next time you come into that matchup, you can prevent that situation from happening. So this is where the reverse engineering technique really comes in handy. I've said this a lot on my channel in multiple videos, but this is essentially the way I fundamentally view both the game itself through small wins and big wins, as well as just overall improving at the game and learning more about the game. So this is a topic that I've dwelled upon over the past few years, and I don't have all of the answers, but I just want to push it out there and hear back from you guys in the community. Now, we all know across all the major regions, there's 16, 17, 18-year-old really high elo solo queue players in Challenger. You know, maybe they meme a lot, they don't practice that seriously, they just have fun, they play a lot of different champions, they're just extremely talented. And I always get asked, Curtis, how come these players exist? You know, they don't watch, all your videos, they don't do insane review, they don't do all this crazy stuff, and they're still really high elo. How come they can get away with it? So what I want to do now is share with you a few of my thoughts on this specific topic and what the traits actually are of these players. Now, most of these players, in my experience, have one or many of the following traits. The first one is that they are absolutely obsessed about the game. Nothing else really matters to them, and nothing else really occupies their brain. They don't really have a social life, they don't really care about school, they don't work a job, they don't have a girlfriend, they just play an insane amount of hours. And this does actually two things. The first one, when they do play the game because they love the game so much and they're so obsessed about it, they don't think about anything else. They have zero mental baggage, just pure clarity, pure focus, even though they're not like intense, they actually are, because they have nothing else going on in their brain. They don't care about anything else in their life because usually they're young, they have no responsibilities, and they can just get away with just purely focusing on the game. You may call this obsessed, you may call this being addicted, or you may just call this being young. And the second thing it actually does is, even when they're not playing the game, they are obsessed about the game and thinking about it. Now, my friend Nathan, who I live with now, he actually got, when we were both in high school, we went to high school together, and he actually got ranked 2. He was a ranked 2 Udyr player on our server. And people used to think he was the greatest solo queue player ever on our server. And remember, when being at school, he used to tell me he was thinking about Udyr jungle path, Udyr builds, how he was going to play specific matchups, what the most efficient path was, how he was going to play this game next time. Like, he was just thinking so much about the game, even when he wasn't playing the game. So if you think about this just in sheer hours, and this sheer amount of time that you're thinking about the game, this definitely has a lot of positive effects over the long run. And the second trait is the arrogance factor. A lot of these young kids are very arrogant and very cocky, but this is actually very good for them because they truly believe in their mind that they are the best Katarina or the best Echo or the best Yasuo or whatever champion they play. And this allows them to play with confidence, to play with conviction, not overcomplicate things, not doubt their level of play, or not doubt their ability to execute on this mechanical outplay. They really do believe they are amazing at these champions. Now, yes, this can have long-term implications because eventually they hit a wall, they have to relearn the game, they lose their confidence, or they become very toxic. But in the short term, it can actually allow them to climb way above what they would have otherwise if they were actually in reality and realize how much they had to learn. So it just shows it's kind of like blissful ignorance in a way. And it actually ties into one of my favorite military quotes, which is, a poor plan executed greatly is better than a great plan executed poorly. And generally you see this with a lot of Katarina one-tricks, Echo one-tricks, Aurelia and Yasuo one-tricks, any of those mechanically intensive champions where committing aggressively and really committing to an aggressive trade will pay dividends if it's done very well. Now, this may be a very controversial take and might actually get me into trouble in the future, but I'm going to share it anyway because I just don't want to be fake, and it seems to ring true nearly every single time, is that the people that society deems smart or deep thinkers generally have a much harder time climbing to high elo and have a much harder time being good at the game because they are great at countering themselves. They are great at getting in their own head, and because they actually understand the implications of every single thing happening in the game, they have such high standards for themselves and they tilt so easily. They are masters at rationalizing subpar play or reading into things too deep rather than just being able to follow their instincts, follow their feelings, and trusting their current level of play to actually make decisions. And as bad as it feels to say this, the players that were deemed not as smart in society and just were very present in the moment and lived day by day were just straight up better League players. And I think it's very similar to the reasons those very young, cocky, arrogant players were very good at the game, is because they were present in the moment. They didn't think about anything else. All they thought about was the game. They didn't think really deep. They didn't think, oh my god, if I like spend this whole year playing League and I fail, like what's going to happen? Like, they don't think about their future too much. They don't overcomplicate situations. They trust their instincts. They're having fun. They're enjoying the moment. They're living their life to the fullest every single day. But this is where it all gets really messy, because I do believe at the highest level of competitive play, the best players are incredibly self-aware. They are very deep thinkers, and they really understand why some games they do perform, other games they don't perform, and they have amazing pattern recognition. So yes, I believe maybe the shallow thinkers that don't think too much and they kind of go day by day and things like that, yes, maybe that can get you to a certain level, but in order to take things to the next level and perform at the highest level, I think you really do need to have a solid, or at least a solid level of intelligence, or the ability to think in the future and be a relatively deep thinker to really understand and put together all the pieces of the puzzle to perform consistently. Now, one of the most unique problems to League that I've always thought about is that in order to become a high level player or a challenger level player, you can't escape having to play thousands and thousands of games across the span of years. And it always got me thinking, Compare this with any other traditional sport, whether it's football in Europe or American football in America or AFL in Australia. There's a physical limitation to it. You don't just play thousands of full games. You mix it up with drills, or maybe you review strategy, and there's actually just the physical element. You can't just play that long because it's a physical sport. And it got me thinking, well, what problems could this cause over the long run? And I'm assuming this is the exact same for chess and poker, where it can open yourself up to creating a lot of toxic habits that are detrimental to your improvement. And number two, it actually increases the chances of forming a lot of basically immovable mental blocks within certain aspects of the game. And this is why, guys, I'm so incredibly passionate about the mental side of the game, because by the time you reach Diamond 1, you have likely played a ridiculous amount of games, probably thousands of games by this point in time. And given you've played thousands of games, you are likely very beaten down, have a lot of invisible narratives, and have to find the time to create your own toolkit to be able to deal with this shit in order to actually create a realistic, or bring back a realistic or positive view of reality. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in your head, you're going to be literally treading water, and you're not going to go anywhere. And as a follow-up point, guys, we have to remember how hard it is to actually get out of your comfort zone and push your boundaries, because losing is fucking painful. Right? Losing is very painful in League of Legends. Think about what actually happens if you lose a game. You have the immediate loss of LP. Compare that with, say, CSGO, right? In CSGO, you lose a game, nothing comes up and tells you how much LP you've lost. That's one element of it. As well as the potential getting flamed and loss of confidence, your ego attachment to the game. There are so many reasons why losing just fucking sucks. And so what happens as a result of why losing is so painful, we want to stay in our comfort zone. We don't want to change. It's very easy for us to create these nice little, comfortable little narratives, stay within our comfort zone, stick to the same champions, because we don't want to lose. We don't want to experience all of these painful things that happen as a result of losing. And this is, again, why we need to become very aware of what is happening, because we can easily get sucked up into these toxic loops and these little weird ways of viewing the game. Now, if you've watched any of my content, you've probably heard me say champion mastery a trillion times by now, but it really is an integral part of each and every player's improvement at the game, and there's two main reasons why champion mastery is such an important concept to understand. Number one, similar to that race car driver analogy that I mentioned earlier on in the video, if you have champion mastery with a small set amount of champions, it actually brings about a lot more consistency, because you're reducing the amount of variables that you need to consider when actually trying to identify what is going wrong. If you go into a review and you know your champion's identity really well, you know the champion micro, you know how to do the combos, the trading patterns, how to play fights, how to play skirmishes, when you go to a specific moment in the game and you're really unsure of what to do, then you know 100% it's less to do with your champion, it's actually to do with overarching game skills, not champion skills. So then you can start to think, do I understand jungle tracking, jungle pathing, side lane awareness? Did I identify the win condition given my champion's identity? Did I understand what next objective was coming up? You can actually bring it to league-specific skills rather than champion-specific skills. And the second point, guys, given how many concepts the average player understands now due to the amount of educational content on YouTube plus all the coaching available, the average player knows how to punish way harder. So if you don't have any champion mastery and you don't know how to play your lane at all with your champion, you are going to lose so fast, because there's going to be a one-trick player out there that's played 400 or 500 games on their champion. They're going to know how to abuse the hell out of you within the first 2 minutes of the lane. So keep in mind, guys, given the amount of educational content out there, you can't afford to spread yourself thin in regards to champion mastery. But we also have to remember that there are a lot of other dangers with tunneling on champion mastery and becoming a one-trick. You can become incredibly one-dimensional with the way you view the game, with the way you view winning games, with the way you view what's strong in the game, what's weak in the game. For example, if you're a Katarina one-trick, you're going to think Fizz is the most busted champion in the game, and if you only play Yasuo and Talon, you're going to think Renekton and Garen Mid should just be removed from the game, plus a whole host of other invisible narratives. And this is why I'm such a big advocate for having a well-rounded pool, is because you don't get tunneled in on playing the game a certain way, and your overall view of the game is going to be much more more holistic. So this is the challenge, guys. We actually have to understand the significance and the relevance of a concept like champion mastery, and at the same time understand how honing in on only one or two champions can actually give us a very one-dimensional, tunneled-in view of the game, which can prevent us from viewing League of Legends in a holistic way. And this is actually what makes pro players so incredibly special. Now, in regards to pro players, I've actually realized that the amount of champions that you can master or play to a very high level directly correlates to your chances of becoming a pro player. The difference between the top solo queue players and the pro players is that the pro players can and have to play a lot of champions to a very high level. Yes, Faker's not going to be as good as Mango Fish at Fizz, or Z99 at Zed, or PZ Zhang at Yasuo, but he's pretty darn close on a lot of these champions, and that is a sign of a very good pro player, because they can play so many champions to such a high level. So therefore, in order to become a pro player, it actually requires quite a few things. It requires you to be able to be very good at learning and adapting. It requires you to have a very holistic view on the game, but it also requires you to be able to put your ego aside and be very good at learning from anyone. And this is actually why I love Bwipo so much, because he seems like such a genuinely curious, open-minded guy, yet still so confident. And in a recent interview with him, I believe it was with Thorin and Monty, he was talking about how he learns from everyone in solo queue. And like, yes, there might be some like random Mordekaiser top one trick, and that guy is probably better at Bwipo at Mordekaiser. And rather than like letting that affect your confidence as a player, or affecting your ego, or affecting your self-belief, he just learns things from him, takes things from him, asks him questions, does 1v1s with him, and actually is able to learn champions more effectively than anyone else he versus. Now this flows in nicely as to why I hate amateur tier tournaments, and I hate any tournament below master tier. Okay, so I actually had a guy come into my Discord recently, and I took a look at his OPGG, and he asked me, like, what is going wrong? I don't know how to improve. I've been playing a lot of champions because I'm in this amateur tournament, and I need a big champion pool so I don't get target banned, and he's telling me all these problems. And it got me thinking, if you're in gold, or in platinum, or even in, like, low diamond, there is no way you are going to be able to play multiple champions, like more than 3 champions to a relatively high level. And if you do that, if you choose to play a lot of different champions and you're not, you're below master tier, then what's actually going to happen? You're going to become much worse. You're going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Because the only way you go from gold to platinum to diamond to master tier is through champion mastery. If you don't have champion mastery, you can't do dick all. Okay, so please, 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 if you are a person who wants to climb to high elo, is not just playing the game for fun, you will be significantly decreasing your chances of climbing in solo queue if you're trying to expand your pool to like 5-6 champions because you play some shit amateur tournament. Okay, please focus on your solo queue. No pro player, I'm telling you this right now, no pro player or player who now plays professionally got good by playing amateur tournaments. They didn't start playing tournaments seriously until they were already a high elo player and they already had that champion mastery and that game understanding. So please don't make this mistake. Now, a few days ago, guys, I had this absolutely fascinating solo queue experience, and I just want to share this story with you guys and get your take on it. Now, on both sides of the teams in this game, there were a lot of notable pro players. There were notable players on my team and notable players on the enemy team, plus myself and plus a few other characters. Everyone knew who everyone was in that game, and you could tell that there was mutual respect across the board. And what actually happened was that the pro player in my bot lane got absolutely dumpstered. I believe he went like 0-6 or 0-7 or 1-7 or something like that. He got absolutely shit on. And yes, there was a lot of sloppy plays. Some people were getting caught out. It was a relatively intense game though, because my top lane was winning, but my bot lane was losing. It was one of those back and forth games. But the enemy bot laner was very fed, and my AD carry just fed his ass off. But what was fascinating is that there wasn't a single ping on someone's head. There wasn't a single word of flame. There wasn't a single rager. There wasn't a single all chat banter. There was nothing. Everyone just played. Everyone was intense. Everyone was focused. No one tilted. No one was rage splitting. No one was doing anything stupid. Everyone listened to calls. Everyone was actively trying to win the game on both sides. And it got me thinking. I can't even remember the last time I had a game like this. And I thought to myself, why was this the case? How come this guy got shit on, but he didn't like just give up? And how come like he didn't rage at his support? How come there was there was no tilting. It was just a pleasant League of Legends experience where I learned a lot. It was a great high quality game, and we just went on to the next game. And it made me realize, wow, if everyone in a game genuinely respects both their teammates and their opponents, what would League look like? Like, if you went into every single solo queue game, and for some reason, you could see them all in person. So there was another 4 desks next to you, and you could see all those players, and next to you, there was the teammate on the other side of the room, all of those players. And, like, you knew them personally. Let's say you knew them personally, maybe they went to your school, maybe they were classmates, whatever it was, and you played this game. It's likely that you're probably not going to flame them or rage at them and things like that, because you respect them as a person, you know them, and you care about the way they view you. You genuinely care about the way you're perceiving yourself, the way you're, pushing out your personality you don't want people to view you in a very negative light. I think that's a better way to put it. And it got me thinking, holy shit, so amazing. How could this, imagine if this would have happened every game. Imagine how beautiful League of Legends would be if we just all respected our teammates and respected our enemies. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever had a similar experience. Maybe not in a lower elo because you don't verse the same players. I don't know, but it was very refreshing. And it got me thinking, maybe if in-houses could replicate this sort of environment, who knows what could be possible. If we could replicate that sort of intensity across a lot of games, who knows what could happen. Now, for those of you who are interested in the way I view low elo at a fundamental level, there's actually a concept called the winners and losers game. And I actually spoke about this on one of my recent podcast episodes, but for those of you who haven't listened to that, this will be new to you. And essentially how winners and losers game works is it's actually a concept that came from tennis. And amateur tennis and professional tennis. In amateur tennis, the best strategy to win games, because everyone is quite bad, is to just keep hitting the ball back over the net. You don't need to do anything fancy. You don't need to do crazy serves or crazy hits. I don't know the terms for tennis, so don't flame me for this one. But you don't need to do crazy stuff. You just got to get it back over the net, because if the person you're versing tries to do crazy stuff, they will beat themselves because they don't have the skill level to do anything fancy. So if you're very good at the fundamentals of tennis in amateur tennis, you will win most games. But that strategy doesn't work in professional play, because if you don't do anything proactive, you don't do any crazy hits, you're going to slowly lose, because the opposition will do some game-winning shot and they will beat you. So you can't afford to just be reactive. But in professional tennis, they call it the winner's game. And it's the winner's game because you have to hit winners. You have to hit winning shots, which are a lot harder to pull off, but they're doable because you're a high-level player. But if you were to try and do these winning shots in these amateur-level games, you're going to beat yourself. And it's the exact same thing for low-elo games versus high-elo games. So in low-elo, you basically want to be reactive. All you want to do is focus on the fundamentals, focus on your farm, focus with making decisions that are coherent with your champion's identity. You don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to do crazy dives, crazy solo kills, crazy roam plays, whatever. You just got to do the fundamentals, stay farmed, and do your job. Because the enemy, if they try to overforce, they will beat themselves. Whereas in high-low, if you play this way, they will just absolutely run over you because they're not going to make basic mistakes. So this is just at the most fundamental level, the way I like to view low elo. So thanks for watching, guys. I haven't really done this sort of content before, so feel free to give me a bit of feedback here. If you want to see more of it, you want to see less of it, just let me know. Otherwise, I will see you during the next video. Cheers, guys.